Good morning. How are you doing? Welcome to Q4. Thank you for spending some time with us. Hopefully, you'll get some value and insights out of everything that we are piecing together. Okay, so a few things. I want to start off by talking about the recession, what it means, and what you should be thinking of or about as a franchisor, because I think there will be some value in that. So, according to the general definition, 2 consecutive quarters of negative gross domestic product equals a recession. Therefore, according to that data, we entered a recession in the summer of 2022. And so I like to think of that as the starting point for what should we be doing from a franchise community to start combating this, especially when it comes to lead generation. So we start with summer 2022, and I'm going to do my hand drawing of an inverted bell curve. What I like to do, it's almost like this. I got to go backwards because the screen's backwards. But you go summer 2022. And then you go fall into the winter, into the spring, into the summer, and then up. And why? From 1854 to 2020, the average U.S. recession has lasted 17 months. So what that means, if we're talking about summer, let's just call it July. Then we're talking the end of 2023 based on that time frame. And then from 1945 to 2020, the average recession has lasted 10 months. So that means a better case scenario, the recession is going to go from July until mid-year next year. Now, this is where I think things get complicated for franchise brands. There's what's happening in the moment, and then there's what's happening over here, called the future. Because development and current economic conditions don't always align. Let me explain. So if there's a recession, consumers tend to tighten up. But the reality is what that usually creates is fluctuation or turbulence in the job market, which is good for franchise development, because when there's turbulence, franchise buyers tend to come out of the woodwork and say, I am interested in looking for something else in my career or my life, either income replacement, wealth building, some sort of combination. It happens when that turbulence occurs. So if we're looking at, again, somewhere between 10 months and 17 months, depending if we're looking from 1945 or 1854 to current point, it will give some sort of sense of how much timeline do we have to push down the pedal. Marco's Pizza, for instance, I like studying what they did in 2008, whether this was purposeful or not. They had explosive growth. They went from a relatively unknown pizza brand to one of the bigger players. And if I look at what they did from an outsider perspective, they spent a ton on marketing the franchise opportunity in 08, 09, and 10 to build up this snowball effect so that when things were good, they had the momentum from a brand standpoint. Now, looking back at that time, I don't know that the philosophy on the multi-unit operator was fully baked yet. So I don't know the condition of the franchisees that entered the system, whether they were single unit franchisees or they were franchisees who could scale. But they used a downturn in the economy as that slingshot to get their growth going and propel them into a great standing. So where you're sitting today, from a FranDev standpoint, I think it's something to think about. And we talked about this last month. So let me go back to this comment. If we think about the buyer behavior or the candidate journey, and we look at the facts, which they are risk averse. A franchisee is risk averse. That's why they're buying a business in a box. They're buying a business that has a roadmap for how they do things. Now, there's two sides to that. Are they buying it because they can't build it on their own? Or are they buying it for the shortcut of hoping to say, I'll pay royalty and franchise fee and everything else for the access to your consultancy because you know how to do this as a franchise brand. And I believe that your business is going to help guide me to making money. So is it because it can't be entrepreneurial? Or are they risk averse because their confidence isn't as high as it maybe should be or could be going into this thing? So because of risk averse, we have to snag on emotional side of making them feel confident that this business makes sense for us. Where can that be done? And we've talked about this: Thanksgiving, Christmas, Hanukkah, New Year's. There's a lot of family time coming up, and we're in a recession. So we take those two things. There might be some turbulence at their job. Things have been really, really strong on the employee standpoint for a long time. Could that be wavering slightly? They're looking at their family. They're looking around the room. They're thinking about legacy. If they're in between, the ages of 45 and 55, they are in their accumulation stage. If they're 55 to 65, they're in their pre-retiree stage where, like, what does my nest egg look like? What does my life look like in 10 years from now? And so as a franchise brand, this gives you a tremendous opportunity to paint the right picture that showcases the emotion, the depth of I have your back when you come into my system. And here's what you get for paying all this money. This is an area of opportunity to strike when the iron's hot, in that you have a recession, you have the holidays, and best case scenario, we're ending the recession in midpoint next year. Worst case scenario, based on historical data, it's at the end of next year. There's another insight here on the buyer, and I talked a lot about this during the starting of COVID. I said, look, this is where great brands are going to be created. The brands that push down and spend, not dumb spending, like wise spending, right target, right persona in the right markets, are going to be the brands that propel when things start changing. And right now we're in the change zone. Like, the masks are off. Things are a little bit calmer right now. We'll see how the winter plays out. And I can see there were great brands that built up tremendous momentum during that time. But the momentum that they're having today is not built on today. It's built on some of the things and decisions they made in the early part of this year and the late part of last year. And so a good exercise for you as a franchisor is go to the end of the recession, either July or December of next year, and you write down, what do I want to have happened during this period? Is it 100 units? Is it 1 million units? Is it 1 unit? Is your current franchisees, all adding another location to their portfolio? Whatever it is, write it down and then say, what do I need to do to get there? And if you hit this hurdle where you're like, financially, that feels uncomfortable, well, then find a way to get comfortable with it by saying, let's build a rolling budget so that we can, every time we have success, we take that franchise fee, pump it back into franchise development, and push down the pedal again. So therefore, you're not putting to the side all this cash in the world. You're taking success and you're propelling it against what you're trying to accomplish from a brand standpoint. Another important thing, on the backcasting, also think backwards and say, okay, I didn't hit whatever goal I set out. What do I wish I would have done differently? That might give you another insight for how you can approach this runway of the next 10 months to 15 months, somewhere in that range. Okay, so the buyer journey, as all of you've known and have listened to me speak, I talk about this 6.4 months, which has been our franchisee data of how long it's gone from impression to inquiry. Now, that's on average. That's not the only way a candidate is entering the funnel. But in general sense, the money I spend today dictates what I'm going to do in the first quarter of next year. Like, that's part of how this journey is working. However, and I put this in the note that went out to obviously invite you into this discussion, I said in September, those profiled were closer to 2 months. This pool of franchise buyers made up of signees meaning they just entered franchising. The average age of these buyers are mid to late 40s, which is in line with who I think most brands target. And the bulk of those profiled were actually going into investments under $250,000. So that's, I mean, it's a fair insight that the candidates that have come into the system this year are moving a little bit faster, which is good because that means you as a brand are doing better job at celebrating your business and positioning, establishing the why you, why now. And therefore, it's probably having impact on that funnel and shortening that time cycle down. There are a few things there that I think are super important, and I'll say I've had some experiences in life to watch how does discovery days work, what are the true decision points, what could sway a decision in a different direction, and I dove deep into this over the summer to try to gain some of these additional insights and put myself in the role of a candidate. I recently worked through an assessment. We do these assessments where we do a deep dive into a business with a brand, and I was blown away. And I think there's value in what blew me away in the business opportunity. It probably isn't right for me because I have to focus on this. But some bullet points that I thought were valuable. Having your back seems super heavy with that brand. They actually go and seed the market prior to expanding to it. They'll build up a customer base. Why is that important? What they do is they actually sell the customer base over to their franchise candidates when they buy into the market. So there's a automatic cash flow. I thought that was interesting. Is that going to make sense for all brands? It won't. But there probably is an insight to taking that approach to your business. Another brand that I thought did an interesting job during 2008, 9-10 was Sonic. They would go spend millions of dollars on marketing on the consumer front in a market that they had no units in. What that did, it built up a tremendous amount of excitement so that when the unit opened, they had these crazy grand openings. Do I think you need to seed the market at that level? No, most brands won't have the resources to do it. But are there areas of opportunity to start talking to that marketplace? Totally. You could hit alumni networks, 1 degree separated from franchisees or folks where you're based. Take your base market, which is obviously going to know you a little bit better, and find alumni of schools that are in that marketplace. So there's some tactics to try to create some of that buzz. Start buying some Facebook ads now to say coming soon, so that a candidate is seeing this stuff that you're coming into the marketplace. Pool your Facebook group and say, where do you want us to go next to get that excitement going? So there's various ways that you can do it at a cost-effective standpoint. But again, step one that impressed me was they're seeding the market. Step two is I said, tell me about your marketing. They handle the Facebook ad buys on behalf of the franchisee. They've engineered their cost per deal pretty well. And obviously it wavers depending on how Meta is performing. They're very heavy on Facebook ads and their user acquisition. They have nailed the tech stack so that franchisees don't have to do much. They invested in a call center for both proactive and reactive lead generation, basically telling the franchisee, you go focus on being the hero in the community. Let us do everything on the back end. They have all the creative package set up to market. When the franchisee comes on board, they actually send someone into market to walk and get them comfortable with going door to door as a part of their onboarding. And the end of the story is franchisees on the top end are walking away making $250,000 at the end of the year. On the lower end, somewhere in the 100 beyond, so that you can get a sense of the type of cash this business kicks off. The total investment is less than $250,000. So I looked at that and I said, okay, so what are the takeaways? One, try to create some excitement in the marketplace before you go there. So if you're targeting Dallas, doesn't hurt to try to create some brand buzz there. Know what your tech stack is. How can you hand a tech stack to your franchisee? And I say tech stack, that doesn't mean you have to go invent or build an app as a part of your sales structure. If you have, great, but you don't have to go that deep. You just need to say, here's how we operate the business through technology so that they're set up for success. Have a point of view on marketing. How are we going to get you going? This particular brand has jacked up the amount required for the grand opening, knowing that if they set the expectation high, then the franchisee will get out of the gates hopefully stronger, and then show support in a way that's different than, I'm going to sit with the franchisee at training, and we do training and whatever else. Oh, and on the training side, they actually built out training videos for every aspect of the employee base, so that the employees have a training toolkit. Again, leveraging a vendor to create it, but they put all these things in place. Overall, the statement was they're reinvesting in the business to build something up that ultimately they can exit at some point. And so the reinvestment of dollars is actually going quite far. So from your brand standpoint, what's your story on that, and how are you delivering it out there? Now let's get into the website or the digital experience that you currently have. And again, I've encouraged you guys to constantly go back and look at what's your story beyond your website and when they get into the website. I was recently talking to a brand. Their sales are not going the direction that they want them to go in. They are not afraid to spend money. They are spending dollars. But as I tracked the candidate journey, it went from dollars spent into a website that didn't tell the best story, and therefore they leave the audience passive. If I dive into their Google Analytics, which is a tremendous tool for any of you brands to use, I could see they're seeding the markets. I can see people coming to the site in markets that they have no penetration in, but for whatever reason, they're not converting into leads. And I said, look, you can continue to spend money, spin your wheels, and hope that someone finally says yes, or you can push pause a little bit, try to recalibrate things, reestablish your why you, why now on your website. First message, why would anyone want to buy you, and why would they want to buy you now? And try to put it back to work, because then you have 30 days here to hit a reset prior to the holidays, and you still have an opportunity to press down the pedal. So I again, like if I'm you, I would go through your candidate journey, try to discover if there's any landmines or gaps there, and then if you notice things, or there are aspects of your business. Let's say the break even is longer than expected. Your franchisees aren't making money until year 2 or 3. Like, understand the chinks in your armor so that when you are talking to the candidate, you can address those head on, so you don't leave it up to them to go around the web or through due diligence and be turned off by something and back out. So you personally diving into your buying process could have tremendous value. Now, I say that I'm going to end in this comment. I put in here about the fearful buyer, which a recession creates fear. The media creates fear, and what that does is it probably has us hover our feet over the brake. And so the downs of a fearful buyer is that is the majority when it comes to franchising. They buy into a system that they have little to no control over, and so they keep their minds at no much longer in the process that someone is a business operator that says, I recognize opportunity, I'm going to push down the pedal, I'm going to buy right now. But don't dismiss someone who is hesitant as cold if they come to the table properly capitalized, then you have a very strong opportunity to facilitate them through the process, call it franchise development, not franchise sales, to get them to the level of comfort. Look in your database of franchisees of someone who maybe was uncomfortable in the buying process to mentor them through it. I think the mentor model is a tremendous opportunity, but keep them in there and constantly ask them, what could you be doing differently to impact their buying decision? I think like often we call them cold if they don't answer our calls or they don't answer our texts or they don't answer our emails, but sometimes they're just hesitant or they're scared or they're fearful. And if they feel you're selling too hard, they may back away. That doesn't mean they're out, but they're a no waiting to turn into a yes. So try to dig through your brand assets to figure it out. It's the Apollo 13 scene, and I use that analogy way too often. But you know, as a brand, you have all the tools to sell franchises or award franchises. Sometimes you just have to recalibrate, or you got to say, how do we take these things that are in our brand ship? I'm going to trademark that. In our brand ship, how do we re-scramble them to get the boys home? I see 2 questions that came into the chat. What was lacking in the tech stack that stopped your friend from moving forward? There wasn't one, and that's an interesting question and probably a very basic answer. But if you think through Slack or you search for home management for home services, there's a million solutions out there that can take from deploying the car to the home, to photos when you get to the home, to the final billing at the end of it. Like there are companies that have set this up. They just didn't have it organized. So you say, what's the tech stack? And the answer wasn't very strong. So that's on the tech stack side. And then question, have you seen an uplift in franchise interest and leads with brands who have invested in overall brand advertising? Oh, absolutely. If you think through what the candidate needs in the process, part of what they need is they need to believe that you know how to market to the customer, which that goes back to the tech stack question as well. How do you market to the customer? How are you going to get customers for me? What does that model look like? So the brands that have gone heavy on the brand advertising end up using that as a part of their leveraging for franchise development, because the consumer positioning is part of franchise development. And this sometimes blows my mind. There are consumer websites that bury the word franchise. Consumer marketing says franchise is a bad word, we're going to keep them off. It's like, yeah, but that's what keeps you at a franchisor from a job standpoint, that if the brand were to stall out and can't grow anymore, then they fail. And the reality is, for food brands and probably for retail brands, there was some affinity for the brand that came from the consumer side prior to them buying into the franchise. I loved the pizza. Man, it was the best thing ever. The experience was so good. I walked in the store and the branding looked awesome. I want to buy. I'm evaluating a brand right now in the wellness space that their business may not be as strong as it needs to be from a return on investment standpoint, but the branding is so beautiful that it will probably make it so that folks sidestep some of the challenges in the business model, overlook it, and still say yes to that. And so the consumer positioning ends up being so vital to awarding or selling franchising. And the best franchisors are where the CMO and the CDO or the VP of marketing and the VP of development are partners, and they partner in the success of the business, because that's how you start growing. Because on the development side, again, the buyer needs to feel confident on the consumer side. And on the consumer side, that ends up driving the sales for the franchise side, which great sales and happy franchisees grow brands. All the marketing buzz and all the things that a marketing agency can do, those are all tactics that support whatever business model you have. But it's your business model that needs to be sound in order to sell franchises the way that you expect to sell them, or at the level that you hope to sell them at. So in closing, thank you for everybody that's lasted this long, and hope you've received value out of this conversation. Recession is going to last 10 to 17 months. That's what data says. Use this, if you choose, as an opportunity to take advantage of a downswing in the economy to build up the equity and business value. This is your opportunity to push down the pedal. The buying process seems to have shortened for investments under $250,000. That's another good insight to leverage the holidays. And again, I would encourage you to backcast as much as humanly possible. Go to the place that you want to be at the midpoint of next year. What needs to happen to make it work? Try to do that. What are the potential landmines that could cause you to not have that happen? Work through that. I do it with my business. I think there's value in it. Try doing that. Do that in your life. Do that in your personal life. Do that in your career. Where do you want to be at the midpoint of next year when this recession is over? Write that down and then go through the positives and negatives. And maybe that'll help you gain an insight in this process. Again, thank you so much for spending time with me. Feel free to add comments or questions as you find this throughout social media. Look forward to talking to you a month from now with hopefully more valuable insights that you can use in your journey to being a great franchise. Thank you, everybody. Have a great week.